Hey everyone, it's Jolie Man, and welcome to my 2018 Game of the Year discussion. This is one of my favorite videos to make all year because I get to talk about the year in gaming in general and also a lot of my favorite games that I got to play. With that being said, I am going to be changing up how I'm doing things this year. So in years past, what I do is I do this discussion video, then take 2 weeks off to try and play some games that I may have missed, and then come back with a short video just actually naming my game of the year. This year I'm not doing that. I am just going to be doing one big video naming my game of the year. I am still going to take 2 weeks off, but I am going to come back with my most anticipated games of 2019. With that being said, however, I am not changing up the formula of this video. So, for those of you who don't know, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to talk about the game that I had the most fun with this year and the game I played the most this year. And then I'm going to go into my top 5 games with 3 honorable mentions. And I do this because I believe that just because you spend a lot of time with a game or you had a lot of fun with a game doesn't necessarily make that the best game of the year, if that makes sense. So, with all of that out of the way, I will now get into the game I had the most fun with this year. The game I had the most fun with this year is definitely Spider-Man, and that is for a number of reasons, the main one being the traversal around New York. Insomniac really nailed the web slinging, and it was fun just swinging around and getting the feeling of being Spider-Man. And while I don't think the combat is great, it is simple and deep, and it can be pretty satisfying to pull off a bunch of tricks and stuff. And I will say, I did have a lot of fun getting the platinum, even though it is a pretty simple platinum to get. And yeah, I don't know, just Spider-Man is a lot of fun, and it's definitely one of the more entertaining games that I did play this year. So, with that being said, I'll move on to the game I played the most. So, technically, the game I played the most this year was Destiny 2. However, I'm not going to count that because, for starters, it came out last year, not this year. And for 2, it would be the game I played the most every year. So, yeah, I'm not going to count that. So, the game I somewhat played the most this year is Dragon Ball FighterZ. And I clocked in at about 113 hours and 24 minutes. And it's easy to see why. I did put a lot of time into this game, trying to get really good, and hopefully I can get back into it over the break, because I've kind of been wanting to be honest. I haven't played since the new patch came out, and I just want to do some tournaments and stuff. So, that is it for the game I played the most this year. So now I'll get into my honorable mentions, and I should point out that this is in alphabetical order. So, as I said, on to the honorable mentions. So I forgot to mention this up top, but all the games on my list are great games, and I would recommend you guys go play them at some point. But with that being said, this year, while I think there was some great games that came out this year, I don't think it was as good as last year, because last year, I don't remember very many bad games, if that makes sense. I'm sure there was one or two, but like off the top of my head, I can't think of any. Like, it was just a lot of games that were either amazing or like I could see who would like to play those games. It just wasn't for me. But this year there definitely were some duds that came out. I can think of one in particular. But there were a little bit more, and also the gap between the amazing games and just the good games this year was kind of a bigger gap. But with that out of the way, I'll finally get into my honorable mentions, and my first one is Far Cry 5. So Far Cry 5 is my first Far Cry game, and I gotta say, I really enjoyed it. It was fun just going around the world doing kind of whatever I wanted, however I wanted, and the weapons were pretty fun, and I just felt like it controlled really well, and the level of customization was also pretty neat. The one problem I did have with the game is its story. I don't think it's bad, and I'm not going to hate it like a lot of other people do, but it's definitely one of the weaker parts of the game. And also, this is kind of just in a complaint about Ubisoft in general, not this game in particular, but because it is a Ubisoft game, well, nowadays Ubisoft, it does have like the similar feel to all their other games, which the more I thought about it, that does come with some good and some bad. The good is that like it just feels familiar. So like you can just hop into any Ubisoft game basically and you'll know what you're going to get, and that can be fun, but it does make them all feel a little samey, and I feel like this one kind of fell into that trap. So there is that. But other than that, I do want to finish the game. I'm going to try and do that over my break. But yeah, Far Cry 5, I really enjoyed it. I do recommend it if you are looking for an open world game to just get into. And yeah, that's really all I got to say about Far Cry 5. So now I'll move on to my next honorable mention. So let me start off by saying that I don't think Ni no Kuni 2 is as good as the first game. The first game holds a very special place in my heart. It had way better combat, and I like the story a whole lot more. That being said, Ni no Kuni 2 is a great game on its own. Each of its gameplay systems are simple on their own, but when you put them together, it provides a pretty deep and robust gameplay loop that I actually quite enjoy. And as I said, the story of Ni no Kuni 2 is not as good as the first game, but there is still some charm to it. And I would recommend anybody playing this game if you do like JRPGs. I'm still not finished with it. This is another one I kind of want to try and finish over my break, but I don't know if I will though, because I've said that many times before, and it's just never happened. It's kind of the game that'll never end for me, but we'll see what happens. And with all that being said, I'll move on to my final honorable mention, which is... So I actually did have a debate with myself whether or not I should put this in my top 5 or not. And ultimately, I do think there are 5 games better than Spider-Man, but I will say that Spider-Man would be my number 6. So as I said, it's a lot of fun to play, and the feeling of being Spider-Man is amazing in this game. And also, it's one of the best Spider-Man stories put out in the last, I'd probably say 5 to 10 years. And I also think they nailed all the characters in the story, such as Peter Parker, Dr. Octavius, Mary Jane, and it was fun seeing Miles Morales too. I just think that there's enough wrong with the game to keep it from being amazing. Like, for instance, combat is fun, but it doesn't really give you an incentive to try out all of your abilities. And I don't mind a button mashing game, so like you really only use square, triangle, and circle. But that being said, sometimes the combat can be a little clunky, and on top of that, while the boss fights are still pretty good, the combat system itself wasn't made for one-on-one boss fights. It was made more for group fights, if that makes sense. So that's pretty much all I have to say about Spider-Man. And with that out of the way, I'll get into my top 5 games of the year. And once again, these are all in alphabetical order. So, this is going to be interesting. Turns out that Share Factory still has that stupid 10 clip limit in terms of what you can record. So the rest of this video is going to be a one-shot. So if you're wondering why it's not as polished as the first half of this video, basically, that is why. So this is going to be interesting. Anyway, with that little bit of behind the scenes action out of the way, I'll get on to my first game, which is Dragon Ball FighterZ. So Dragon Ball FighterZ is the game that got me into fighting games, and I'm so thankful because fighting games as a whole were a genre that I just ignored outside of Mortal Kombat. And because of Dragon Ball Fighters, I've actually been trying even more fighting games, trying to get competitive at them. And next year should be interesting. So for that, I am thankful. And on top of that, Dragon Ball Fighters as a game itself is really good. Yes, the commands are simple. You only need to know two motions to really do all the moves, but that's not really a bad thing. There's a lot of depth in this game, and it's being found on a daily basis. Like, if you look on YouTube, like pretty much every day you can find new tech and just new stuff being discovered. And on top of that, Arc System Works is doing a great job with its balance patches and bringing the bottom tier characters up and, the top tier characters down a little bit. And so basically the game is becoming well balanced and you can pretty much play any character you want. You still need to do some team building, but outside of that, if you're just going to play casual, you can make pretty much any team work. That being said, though, I'll get onto the Season Pass stuff, which most of the characters were pretty good, and they were great additions to the game, and I cannot wait for Season 2 to see what that brings. And I can't wait for Season 2. It's going to happen. The game was too successful to not have a Season 2, basically. And I'm just curious to see what form Season 2 takes. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say about Dragon Ball Fighters. So now I'll move on to my next game. Dragon Quest XI Echoes of an Elusive Age is a great game simply because it is a throwback JRPG. And I'm so glad that it is just simple and straightforward. With that being said, though, they did make some changes. There are no random battles. And I was a little iffy about no random battles, but after playing it, I'm actually kind of glad it doesn't do that. I can just grind out on my own pace and just ignore fights that I want and get to the main story beats. And I hope that is the future of JRPGs in general, and I think it's going to, because I haven't played Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, but it does the same thing, and that's getting a pretty positive reception too. Also, the story, I'm not finished with the game, cheap plug, but I am streaming it on this channel. But as I said, the story is pretty simple. You've seen it before. It's not bad, though. It's very well done. And same thing with the combat. It's straightforward, yet they do enough to distinguish itself. And like I said, I haven't finished Dragon Quest XI. I am going to, but I think it is easily one of the top 5 games of the year. And also it does look good. It's another Toriyama-based, character-based thing. So, words. Damn it, I really wish I could edit this. But anyway, yeah, Dragon Quest XI, great game. So now I'll move on to the next game on my list. God of War is an amazing game. It's a great reboot for a franchise that, while I don't think became stale to the point that people were saying, it's basically how reboots should be done. And I do agree that Kratos was not a great character in the later games. I would argue that he was a great character in the first game, but that's a different video. By God of War 3, he was just basically a huge rage machine, and was not a great character. And they did a great job of reinventing him and putting him in Norse mythology. And his son Atreus is also really fun. I mean, not fun. He's a great character as well. It's a great back and forth between them, and the story overall is very well written, and I love how contained it is. Like, yes, it is a big semi open world game, semi-open-ish open world. But, it's still a self-contained story. That being said, though, the one slight little problem I have with the game is that even though the combat is great and the trees and everything are great as well, I don't think that there was enough enemy variety. Like, I do prefer like shorter, tighter experiences, but there was basically a limited amount of enemy types in the game. And while I don't want too many more, I think one or two more types of enemies would not have hurt the game in one bit. Also, if you are curious, the Platinum Trophy is doable. Bit of a grind at the end, but not too bad. So, for everyone who was curious about that. So, those are my thoughts on God of War. So now I'll move on to my next game. Monster Hunter World is one of the best co-op experiences I've had in quite a while, actually. Its multiplayer gameplay is fun, and the loop that Monster Hunter World has in terms of hunting the monsters, bringing the materials back, crafting new weapons and armor to go out to fight even more robust monsters to give you a better challenge. That is a fun loop. And this is also another franchise that I didn't play at, like, this is my first entry into the franchise. But I'm so glad I got into it. It was also like the first real big game to come out this year. And so I did put a lot of time into it, about 88 hours. I didn't finish it, kind of a theme of this list. But I don't really feel like, yeah, I wish I could have finished the main story, but I feel like what I did play, I feel accomplished for what I did, basically. Like, I really wish I didn't have to one-shot this. But, basically, I feel like I finished what I needed to finish, basically. And I do plan on going back, and the new expansion looks pretty good. So I can't wait for that. Too bad it's like in autumn, but whatever. I can wait. And yeah, Monster Hunter World. It's a great co-op game, and it also has a bit of that Dark Souls. Like, I hate comparing things to Dark Souls, but it is true that like the combat itself is a lot like Dark Souls, where you gotta take measures and like you gotta attack at the right time, watch your enemies' positioning and the windups to learn their attack patterns and stuff. So, if you're looking for a similar combat system to that, then that's what I'll say about Monster Hunter World. And, yeah, that's pretty much what I got to say about Monster Hunter World. So now I'll move on to my final game. Red Dead Redemption 2 is what happens when a game studio does not have a budget. It's the best way I can put it. It's easily one of the most beautiful games on the current systems right now. And it's also one of the most well-realized worlds that I've been a part of. And it also has probably the best story this year. It is a Rockstar game, so the writing and the voice acting are going to be on point. That being said, though, I do have problems with the game. I have said this before in other videos, but I will reiterate it here. While riding around on your horse is actually pretty good, the actual gameplay itself is not great. Well, I shouldn't say not great. It's still pretty good. Like the shooting itself, it's competent, and I think it's a step up from GTA 5, but there are better third-person shooters on the market, and like overall, the game just does kind of fall short in terms of gameplay. Like, I would not recommend the game like on its gameplay alone. I think I would recommend it on like just the way it looks and its story, definitely the story. But yeah, those are like, I wish I had more time to get into how I really feel about Red Dead 2, but I do kind of want to keep this video a little bit shorter, but I don't know. That being said, though, I think everything that Red Dead Redemption 2 does right more than covers up what it does wrong. That being said, me personally, what I don't like about the game does kind of, edge in there a little bit more, but it's still an amazing game on its own, and it deserves all the praise in the world that it is getting. And yeah, with all that being said, that was a little rambly. I'll now move on to my game of the year for 2018, which is, it's God of War. I actually did have a debate before recording this video on if it is Red Dead Redemption 2 or if it is God of War, because I did finish Red Dead Redemption 2 and the ending did kind of bring it home for me, and I was like, wow, that is a really great experience for Red Dead Redemption 2. That being said, though, the thought occurred to me last night as I was recording the video for this video, basically. Like, I played Red Dead Redemption 2, like, to get the footage, and I thought to myself, I was like, this game is fun. I'm definitely playing the online at some point. I don't know how soon I'm going to get back to this single player. And then when I captured the footage for God of War after 45 minutes, I was like, man, I really want to go back and recomplete God of War because it is an amazing experience. And also for me personally, it's one of the most tightest and fun gameplay experiences of this year. So with all that being said, I think God of War is the more complete package. So for me, God of War is my game of the year for 2018. Although if you think Red Dead Redemption 2 is the game of the year, I won't argue it because I can see why you would think that. And for me personally, Red Dead is like my second to God of War. So, oh man, this is rough. Anyway, that is it for this video. As a programming note, after this, I am going to finish out the rest of this week with streams over on Twitch and here on YouTube. And then I'm taking my 2-week break. That being said, though, depending on how I feel, I may actually come back sooner. But I do kind of want to take the full 2 weeks. So we'll see what happens. I probably won't do anything here on YouTube, but I may stream on Twitch. I don't know. Just thinking out loud at this point. But yeah, I'm going on break at the end of the week. So, that is it for this video. Let me know what your game of the year is. At the bottom, give me a list. You can debate me all you want. I'll read it. And yeah, I just want to hear from you and what you think. So, once again, that is it for this video. If you liked what you've seen, you can go ahead and like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel for more game reviews, streams, all the good gaming stuff. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.